When I was a younger man, I knew many people. Due to my outgoing and strong personality, I was easily remembered and had a name for myself that was well known. Through events in my life, I studied at a faraway city at a locally known university. I was eager to do well with my studies and see what sort of experience I could have during my time there. There was not much eventful during my first few days at the university, and then in one of my classes, I met her, as we got along very well. She was originally a fairly shy woman, reasonably intelligent, but came from a traumatic home. I also had traumatic circumstances in my adult life, so we were able to relate to one another and we became mutual friends. Though she had more local friends than I, due to myself not being originally from the city that the university was based in, I just mostly associated with her and her own group of friends, as they later became some of the greatest people I'd ever met. All of us became a reasonably strong group together, and as a result we actually established a social club for others and possibly established social relations with one another as well. Due to her connections, she was elected as the president of the club, and due to my likability, I was made the vice president of the club. Her other friends were put into different positions of the club, and everything went surprisingly well. Then things started to change. She stopped coming by the club after her classes were finished. One of her closest friends had told me her grades and attendance had begun to decline, and she slowly was becoming more distant with people she'd known and respected for years. At first, we didn't think too much of it. She was an accomplished student and the president of a university social club, so perhaps a slight decline with the academic performance was to be expected. I later heard through whispers from her close female friends that she had met someone and she was in a relationship, but the bloke she was with wasn't good to her at all. It was a rough relationship, and it was the reason why her attendance for her classes, performance with her classes, and her focus with the social club meetings were all waning. Everyone was concerned for her. I was concerned for her, as she was a timid woman, but she slowly became a little bit more assertive with herself and spoke out more to people as well as in situations. Most of it said this change in her personality was due to his influence over her. The social club that we all established together, originally from her inspiration, eventually fell apart due to her actually not being a good role model for others who attended the club and questioned her status as well as her duties as president. Around this time, she first started losing friends due to her academic performance getting so dire that she actually quitted university and decided to get a job. We later learned that it was partly due to her assisting her boyfriend financially. Her reputation continued to suffer, as all of her friends, even me, we all heard consistent rumors about her. Some were perverse, others absolutely disgusting. Others still were unheard of and not true at all. One of her closest friends told me that most of her friends, the circle of friends I trusted wholeheartedly, had a conversation once, saying that if I had only met her a few days earlier, I could have been the potential man in her life. Knowing me, I could have easily saved her, kept her from losing her life to him. To this day, I still remember her telling me that, and the guilt that I had in my heart, knowing that she was right. If only I had met her sooner. If only that. Years passed, and during these years I still kept in contact with her. She had broken off contact with a great amount of people during those years, and usually whatever she told me through phone calls or texts, I told the others. She went from job to job, trying to help support her boyfriend. Their relationship was still a tense situation. Sometimes they were together, other times they were not together. It was very complicated. Even then, years later, we were still considering ways to possibly help her. One of her friends said, only she can realize that the bloke she's with isn't the right choice for her. No one else can do that for her. I felt angry hearing that, but he was right. In terms of her relationship, only she could do anything about it, not us. One day I was speaking to her as we were naturally talking about old times, and I still had feelings for her, and I finally wanted to confess myself to her. She agreed to meet up with me and spend the day with me. As once we got all our blondes together, we met up at a local park. She was dressed nicely, and I purposely wore some of my best clothing as well. We spent some time walking around the park, and she mentioned that it had indeed been a rough time for her, and I can only imagine what she had to endure all these years. She mentioned that she had thought of me and everyone she had ever known at the time. She felt so ashamed of what she had done, how she had acted. She wished that things could have been different. We had been at the park for hours, just walking around, sitting at benches, talking, and yet neither of us had no intention of ending the outing. So I checked my cellular phone and found a restaurant nearby. I mentioned that if she'd want dinner with me, and she agreed, as we then walked from the park to the restaurant. Once we had gone to the restaurant, we were seated and had an absolutely great time. When I look back on it, it was one of the best outings I have ever had in my life, or would ever have in my life. As we took our time ordering, thinking about what we wanted from the menu selection, and ordered from the menu. She started the discussion by mentioning that she had finally left her abusive boyfriend. The reason being that he had slapped her in a public place and caused a scene because she had disagreed with him on some random topic that they were speaking about. As when she revealed that fact to me, I was sipping on a glass of wine. I swear I almost choked on the wine when I heard that. She asked if I was fine, and I said, yes, I was fine. But I said, more importantly, are you fine? She looked to the glass of wine next to her on the table. Her hand reached out to it and held on to it. Her gaze, looking into it, eyeing the wine, before she nodded her head and slowly spoke. She mentioned that she was indeed fine, and that he wasn't going to dominate her life anymore. As I put my own glass down, nodded, and had a smile on my face. It was the first real bit of good news I had heard from her in a long time. Glancing, I looked outside the window seat that we had at the restaurant and could see the park in the distance. Night had fallen and the nightlife of the city was everywhere. It was an absolutely beautiful sight, but second only to her. She was very, very glad to meet up with me, as she said, and to see me. I told her that I felt the same way. I told her that it was good that we were sitting and sharing a meal together like that, as a waiter came out with the food we had ordered and placed it in front of us. We got our utensils out as we began to eat, taking a moment to eat, not saying a word, and just enjoying the company of each other. We ate in silence for a moment, as I looked at her, and I told her how I felt about her. How after all these years I cared about her so much. She ate some of her food before she nodded slowly, and she said that she knew that I cared, and her feelings were split. Half of her heart wished to be with me, and half of her heart desired to be alone, not wanting to be in a relationship with anyone. I never felt my heart feel so empty as when she told me that. I raised my hand to get the waiter's attention, and I told him once he came to us that we'd be needing another bottle of wine. Once the waiter returned and filled our glasses, he left the bottle with us, and we continued to eat. It might have been the wine getting to the both of us, or the fact that she was with me, but she wished that she had met me first all those years ago instead of him. I felt guilty once more as I was reminded of that fact again. Refilling my glass as well as hers, the both of us continued to eat. She mentioned that she had plans for her life, but she was unsure of what to do exactly with her life because she had devoted so many years to her abusive boyfriend. I mentioned to her that she still had her life, and that was the most important fact of all. She nodded and drank her wine more. Eventually we finished our dinner. I told her that I'd take care of the check, but she wanted to pay. But I told her that I knew of the situation she was in, and that the next time we had dinner she could pay for the bill then. She agreed. Once we were finished, we left the restaurant. I asked her if we could have a picture of us together in front of the restaurant with the beautiful background of the cityscape behind us. She agreed, and we took a few pictures, with my phone on hers. As we stood around for a moment, then I decided to walk her to the metro station, then she left. As I stood there alone, for a moment I looked at the pictures on my phone. To this day I still have those pictures. Over the next few days I told her friends about the outing that we had, and one of her friends even called it a date. though we were understandably accepting of the fact that she was still neutral about getting into another relationship so soon, as we were all happy that she was going to reclaim her life, and hopefully things would be better for her, but tragically that never happened. From what I later learned, soon after her outing, she broke off absolutely all contact with everyone she had known, even me. That was the last time that she was seen. No one ever saw or heard from her again. None of us could understand why she decided to just abruptly shut out everyone she had ever known. Most believed that she was so ashamed of the years of her life that she wasted with her abusive boyfriend that it might have been best for her to just completely start over and assume a new life. Others say that she was fated to always endure a subpar life. Even still, others were saying that if she were to have been with me, she could have had everything she had ever wanted, but due to the fact that we could never be together, it would be forever denied to her. As for me, on my opinions about her, it was one of the most tragic and heartbreaking experiences of my life. To know someone so intelligent, so compassionate, so beautiful, so full of potential, to have all of that taken away by an abusive man. I wanted to do so much for her. I wanted so much to help her, but as her former friend once told me, you can't help someone who can't help themselves. There was nothing that any of them could have done for her. There was nothing that I could have done for her.